Oh, hello there. My name's Mr. Honish, and welcome to my flipped classroom. Today we're going to be looking at our neighbors to the south, the former owners of Texas, and the biggest rival of the U.S. men's national soccer team. Mexico. P.S. The was strictly for soccer purposes. I have nothing against Mexico otherwise. Now, from a physical geography standpoint, Mexico is incredibly diverse. Most of Mexico is dominated by a rugged, higher elevation interior. The very center is called the Mexican Plateau, and it is basically surrounded by even higher stretches of something called the Sierra Madre, or Mother Range, and its mountain peaks. As you move from the peaks toward the coast, the elevation decreases and Mexico's coasts turn into wide and flat plains regions. Mexico is surrounded by large water features such as the Pacific Ocean and the Gulf of California to the west, and the Gulf of Mexico and Caribbean Sea to the east. The northern border of Mexico is partially created by the Rio Bravo, or as we know it in the U.S., Rio Grande. The rest of the northern border shared with the U.S. is pretty vague. Where does one country begin and another end? No one really knows, which adds to the controversy over border protection and control, but we'll get to that in a little bit. As far as climate goes, Mexico is pretty diverse as well, with surprisingly cool temperatures in the central regions, dry climates in the north, and warm, humid climates in the south. That might seem kind of odd. I mean, think about a place like Mexico City. Technically, the city is in the tropics, yet temperatures can drop below freezing. Why would that be? Well, with an elevation at nearly 8,000 feet above sea level, or about 1.5 times higher than the city of Denver, the air is thinner and therefore colder. That's a theme that we'll see over and over again with higher elevation this year. Now, historically, Mexico is the birthplace of some of the great early societies like the Mayans and Aztecs. The Mayans built large cities and created an extensive trade network through Mexico and Central America. What they may be most famous for is creating a very accurate and detailed calendar system, which happened to end in the year 2012, which happened to freak a bunch of people out because they thought life as we knew it would end in 2012. The Aztecs famously built their capital on an island in a lake and built an empire out of the groups around them that they had conquered through war. However, when Hernan Cortez arrived from Spain, the Aztecs thought he was a returning god because of the light skin and beard, and the fact that he arrived from the east. That, combined with a little thing called smallpox, eventually led to the complete decimation of the Aztecs and led to an era of Spanish colonization in Mexico. So, for well over 300 years, from the early 1500s to the early 1800s, Spain was in control and brought Catholicism and the Spanish language, which are still dominant today. By 1810, people in Mexico began thinking about independence from Spain, and by 1821, a mixture of political problems at home and other rebellions in other colonies led to Spain leaving and handing over independence to Mexico. For the next 90 years, though, corrupt Mexican politics, heavy influence of foreigners, and wars with the U.S. and France led to the Mexican Revolution in 1910. Now, for most of the 20th century after that, despite the democratic government style introduced in 1910, one political party was dominant. The economy was heavily reliant on agriculture, but much of that was created through environmentally dangerous slash-and-burn methods, and the success of Mexico's economy was closely tied to the prices for the crops they were producing. Over the last couple decades, Mexico has modernized and joined NAFTA, or the North American Free Trade Agreement, which allows them to trade much easier and cheaper with the U.S. and Canada. The development of their oil industry and tourism have brought economic success as well. But the improving economy has not treated everyone equally, especially in urban areas such as Mexico City. Spatial inequality, or the very wealthy and very poor living in one area, has become an issue. These cities have a constant stream of people coming from the rural farming areas looking for opportunities, but cannot always provide high-paying jobs for everyone. The result is a mixture of mansions and slums, and difficulties in infrastructure everywhere. The poverty rate has climbed back over 40%, And based on estimates from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, Mexico is actually ranked second in the world in wealth disparity, which means the gap between the rich and the poor. So, economic opportunity is there, but it seems inaccessible to a large portion of Mexicans. To compensate, many have turned to illegal means of making money. For decades, Mexico has been a hotbed of drug violence. Large cartels have built small armies and fought for control of the streets against each other and against Mexican police and military. All this fighting is over the trafficking of illegal drugs to the U.S., which happens to be the biggest consumer in the entire region. A touchy subject in American politics over the last couple of decades has been Mexican immigration, as many of these people have entered the United States illegally. Some argue that the Mexican immigrants take jobs from legal United States citizens, but others argue that they have boosted the U.S. economy and taken jobs that other people may not see as desirable. That's as far as I'm going to go with that issue right now because it is so sensitive. I don't want to cause any huge dramatic fights here, but feel free to dig into the issue on your own a little bit deeper on your own time. So how will Mexico's continuing development impact its people? Will they be able to create enough jobs and have a stable enough government to avoid the problems of wealth disparity? Will the Mexican government be able to control the drug violence and nurture its legal trade partnerships instead? For those answers, we'll have to wait and see, but for now, go study, and until next time, bye-bye.